Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today's morning devotion is on 2 Peter chapter 2. Yesterday, Pastor Joshua said, by faith, make every effort to know the power and the coming of the Lord. That we need to make every effort to have the power and the coming of the Lord. When we do this, if we do not do this, we will lack discernment. And as we follow, we will go astray. And then we'll begin to follow false teachers, false prophets, and follow them in their destruction. This is what chapter 2 wants to say. I give the title to be. Don't follow false teachers, false prophets. Don't follow greed. Why would people follow false teachers, false prophets? Because in them there is greed. And if we are greedy, then we will agree with what they say. And it will follow them. And they will be destroyed and will follow them in the destruction. Let's look at verse 1 to 3. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there are false teachers among you. From there, you see the focus is on false prophets. False teachers. But you see later on I talk about Balaam. So he's talking about false teachers and also false prophets. He says just as there were false prophets among the people, now they're called false teachers. And they will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who brought them, bringing swift destruction upon themselves. They secretly introduce destructive heresies. And like I say in the end of previous chapter, above all, you must understand that no prophecy of Scripture came about by prophet's own interpretation. False prophets, false teachers will introduce these destructive heresies. And what are these heresies? In the original text, it's choice. That they especially choose a type of teaching. It can also mean bringing about division, that you have chosen a particular teaching. And by choosing a particular teaching, you renounce other teachings. And then heresies come about. Then you might think, why would they do that? Why would you say something that is different from others? Nobody is esteemed to be a false prophet. No one is esteemed to be one. And also, no one is esteemed to be a false teacher. No. So, in theory, at the beginning, they are real. If you will believe a false prophet, they have to be sound, believable to believe them. Why would you believe a false teacher? It's because they teach so well. They talk so well. So I believe they originally were actually prophets and teachers, but they have then fallen astray. They have fallen astray. And you can see the trail of where they fall. Why would they introduce heresies? Because they have an intention, which is what we are about to talk about. Verse 2. Many will follow their depraved conduct and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. In their greed, these teachers will exploit you with fabricated stories. So heresies is brought about because of their greed. That is when they indulge in their own pleasures and they try to make sense of what they are doing. Even if you hit others, strike others, you said you're forced. You are striking someone, and the way you present it is that you were forced to strike them. Then this is the concept of heresies. Why would you be so unrestrained to yourself? But let me tell you, I have a reason. The body and the soul is separated. If you corrupt the body, then your soul will be saved. The more corrupt you're in the flesh, the more you have a desire in your soul and spirit. Okay, do not be confused. I'm sharing with you the concept of heresies. They say a lot of things to try and make sense for you. And so that though you're indulging in unrestrained pleasure, it sounds reasonable. Before I came to know Jesus, I was very interested in even other religions. In Taiwan, I went to a temple to listen to a famous Buddhist teacher teaching. And she dressed very glamorously, which is quite different from what you imagine. And you might think, why would they dress like that? And she said that I do so that you do not just focus on outer appearance. So I deliberately dress like this so that they will have a way to explain what they do. Then follow me. Follow what I do. But false prophets, false teachers will be destroyed, and if we follow them, we will follow them into destruction. So heresies is there paving the way for them to indulge in their unrestrained pleasures. Then you might ask, what do they want to achieve? They want to be unrestricted, unrestrained, not to be ruled by anyone. Do whatever you want to do. All they say is this is greed. In verse 3, in their greed, these teachers will exploit you with fabricated stories. Because they want to receive some benefits from the believers. That is the purpose. At the core of it, it's greed. But these people are gifted, whether they're gifted in speech or they want to satisfy their greed. They want to get benefits, profit from the believers. They want to make sense of what they do or justify what they do. So they begin to teach heresies. And these people are bound to destruction. So don't follow them. If we're unable to know Christ truly, then we are unable to discern whether they are true or false prophets. That is what verse 1 to 3 say. And the next paragraph, from verse 4 to 11. God will deliver the godly from temptation. And those who are with lack of self-control and they slander, God will not save. So then God gave many examples. So that God did not spare the angels when they sinned. And God did not spare the ancient well when he brought the flood on the ungodly people, but protected Noah and 7 others. And the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah God did not spare. Instead, he condemned them. Noah's generation, verse 5, is an ungodly people. And Sodom and Gomorrah are called an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly. Verse 7. He rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the deprived conduct of the lawless. For that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. That is the reason why Lot was saved. Let's talk about a more extreme case. Sodom and Gomorrah, they have the acts of homosexuality. And there are a lot of perverted people. But is everyone like this? Is everyone homosexual there? I think maybe not. It shouldn't be. But only Lot was rescued. I don't think everyone's like that, but only Lot was rescued because Lot was different from them. Lot was tormented in his righteous soul when he saw the unrighteous acts that he saw and heard. He sees them, but he's unable to stop them, so his soul is tormented. And so he was tormented for the sins of this generation. And he was grief. He was in grief. And so was tormented. And as a result, he was rescued. And when I read this, I feel like God is reminding us to be sensitive to sin. And God wants us to hope for the generation to be a godly one. Because in the end, the one who's rescued is because for those who are distressed by the deprived conduct of the lawless. What kind of people would God not save? Previously, we talked about false prophets and false teachers, and talk about greed. We talk about how they are lustful and indulge themselves, and how they try to profit from the believers. Here, what is talk about is the roots of greed will continue to grow and develop. So first of all, is the first 10 is its manifestation. This is especially true of those who follow the corrupt desire of the flesh and despise authority. Bold and arrogant, they are not afraid to heap abuse on celestial beings. Here we talk about following the corrupt desires of the flesh. And they despise authorities, they disrespect them. And to criticize them boldly. That they like to criticize. So greedy people have a manifestation. They like to slander. Means that the tongues are unrestrained, the lips speaks whatever they want. So here's saying angels, although they are stronger and more powerful, they do not heap abuse on such beings when bringing judgment on them from the Lord. So for those who heap abuse, God will not save. The third paragraph, verse 12 to verse 16. Verse 12, but these people blasphemies in matters they do not understand. They are like unreasoning animals, creatures of instinct, born only to be caught and destroyed like animals. They too will perish. Why are they like unreasoning animals? Because they blaspheme in matters they do not understand. They say as though they know everything. And in our current days, that is, let me tell you, COVID-19, you ought to do this, and the problem will be resolved. So it's about, roughly about this is the meaning. Why would the government do this? If they hit their head, shouldn't you just do this, and the problem will be solved? So they talk as if they are the leading expert on COVID-19. You ask them what's the difference between the virus and germs, they might not be able to understand. But they talk as though they know everything. So they like this because they talk about things they do not know. They do not understand. That is blasphemy. That is slander, blasphemy in matters they do not understand. On matters they do not understand. Like it's like our government leaders, their brains are glue. Why do they act like idiots? So now I'm trying to describe what they would say. Perhaps they did not talk about it. They might say that, it should be like this, and that. this is blasphemy of matters in matters they do not understand. Then the problem arises. Will we echo with them? Will because we feel the same way. We feel that these government leaders they have a big problem. But it's actually I have a problem and I was attracted by these people. If I'm a greedy person, then I'll be attracted by a greedy leader. If I'm a person who likes to heap abuse, who likes to slander, then I'd like to get her about people who do the same. So from greed, you become blasphemy and slander. And then 13. The idea of pleasure to carouse in broad daylight, and they are bloat and blemishes, reveling in their pleasures when they feast with you. So they're like adultery. Before it seems like you're talking about false teachers, but in verse 15, you realize it's the way of false prophets. Verse 15 says, the way of Balaam, who loved the wages of wickedness. So he loves money. How much does he love money? He really loves money. His love is agape. That is a love that is unconditional. That is total commitment. As long as you give me more money, I can put everything aside. I can turn back on my friends, on any relationship, in order for me to get more money. This is agape level of love. That is the way of false prophets. The first paragraph: do not follow blasphemy. Pleasures while they feast on money. Next paragraph: understand the way of false teachers and false prophets. Verse 17 we talk about these people are springs without water, a mist driven by darkness. The blackest darkness is reserved for them. Springs without water. When you look at a spring, you will think that, oh, with water to drink, but there isn't. So this is a false appearance. You thought it's a spring, but it's just a hole. Originally, a spring can ease first. It can help people. But then become a trap because you will fall into a hole. Because it's something that is meant to be helping people, but it becomes something that will condemn people. That's a false teacher. Because it's like a trap for those who follow them. If there's a lot of mist, then you can't see clearly, and there's no rain, you cannot nourish the land or the hearts of people. And the mist will block out the sun. And they talk about the Their mouths are empty with boastful words. Before we talk about the blasphemy, and this is boastful words. And they're appealing to their lustful desires. They cannot live out the truth. They promise them freedom while they themselves are slaves to depravity. And they are worse off at the end than they were at the beginning. So false teachers, false prophets, at the beginning they are true. That they have the anointing. That when they talk about, they can really say about what's inside my heart. But do not be deceived. Well, how do we know where they've gone wrong? How do we know if they're so well spoken? How do I know they talk about what's real or not? Don't just focus on what they talk about. See how they live, and you'll see. Look at their action, because their action that will manifest. So you don't have to use a particular way to like actions to discern them. So what even when Jesus talk about the Pharisees, he say Jesus didn't say don't listen to what they teach. What they teach is right, but what they do not be like them. Their actions are wrong. So when you look at their lives, look at their actions, then you will see good trees will bear good fruits, bad tree will bear bad fruits. Do they love to criticize? They like to talk about what they don't know. They like to blasphemy, slander. They like to indulge in pleasures. There's nothing wrong with liking to eat and feast, but if they're excessively indulging them, then there's something wrong. May God help us that we will know Jesus earnestly. So we earnestly know Jesus. Then when we look at the ways of false prophets and false teachers, we'll be able to see that their path leads to destruction. And if we follow them, we will follow them into destruction as well. May God help us.